welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Katharine Ham. I am here with my co-host, as always, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. There's so much happening. I'm a little wired, and it's good because we're going to do lightning round news today because there are so many stories we probably won't get to them, even though it's my job 24/7 to get to them. I'm not getting to all of them. So we're going to do what we can do today. But before we get to all that, the first week of the Trump administration, what's going on with you, Vic?
Hello, Mary Katharine. Yes, this episode is really going to be wheels off. I think anything could happen. That's what they usually do as a teaser for like a TV show when they're like doing a live taping of a show, and it's live taping. And they'll say like anything could happen, tune in. And this is how it feels like, even though this is a taped podcast. But really,
right, but like anything can happen is just like we'll talk.
Yeah, and I want to
microphones.
stress that whatever happens, we're keeping it on the show. We're not editing things out. No. We might bleep. Doing fine. I had this deep thought, and I promised I would bring it up in the previous episode, which is a lot of times parents of young children will have the discussion with other friends, adults, or whoever with kids and say, oh, I'd like to show our kids a particular movie. Do you think they're ready for it yet? Is it kid appropriate, right? And this usually comes up with, it starts off with like, things like Star Wars, which, if you're young enough or something, it might be too violent, right? Or in our time, because movies that we loved growing up, and is this something you want to show your kids, like Jaws,
right?
Raiders of the Lost Ark, whatever.
Jaws.
Kate was scared of the movie E.T. Okay, that. So everyone's different. Whereas I saw the Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Alien with my family. That was something else at the time. So now, though, it's like the reverse. Our kids who are teenagers were telling us, oh, you have to watch Squid Game 2.
Okay.
Because it's so good, they said.
Mm-hmm.
And we reluctantly were like, you know what, it's just nice to spend time with the family all together.
Obviously, yeah.
Otherwise, we're on different places, phones, laptops, whatever. Let's all be together.
Let's all pretend we live in a world of one screen per household. Yes.
And one screen, that's right, watching Squid Game 2. No spoilers here in general, but it's about this insane competition, life or death for money, and it's really powered by people's greed, right? In the second season, the winner comes back because he's trying to end it, right? He wants to go in to end the show.
Okay. That's the premise.
But there is a new twist to the game. So it's in his mind, he's like, I know all the games. I know how to stop this. And of course, the whole thing has been upended. New season, new games.
Right.
But one of the things they do is in between one game to the next, and people are now dying.
Right.
It's very democratic because you all get to vote. Do you want to stay in this game, or you can take the money now and leave? Right. And sure enough, people are like, oh, it's really horrible. This is terrible. I can't believe it. On the other hand, the $10,000, my debt is much larger than that.
Right.
If I can just get through the next game, then maybe we'll be okay. And then we'll have even more. But then it's like, it never ends, of course.
Never.
And one of the challenges.
It's a brutal show.
The
first season was brutal.
Yes, and one of the problems is, of course, converting won into dollars.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's several million won. That sounds like I'd leave now.
You got to Google so many times.
So many times, and it's funny how the Google auto search immediately knows how much 46 million won is, or whatever it is.
Someday the robot will just be in your living room saying, "I see you're watching Squid Game. Here is the translation for how much that is worth."
That would be helpful AI. So. The thing is, we agree to it, Kate, very reluctantly so, and it's like violence and graphic violence, and they watched it, with their cousin. So this is how it happens, unfortunately.
This is life, yes.
And Kate found it disturbing, and
it is disturbing.
The first episode of Squid Game 2 involves Russian roulette. That's very intense. That's just very psychologically intense.
No, I was going to say it is a combo of brutal physically and the psychological part is very. By the way, I'd love to know, in the Squid Game world,
yes, how
much are the production design and game design people being paid behind the scenes, because they're amazing.
Oh yes,
actually they're putting on a reality show to beat all reality shows,
right?
And I just want to know how much those guys under duress as well, because they're doing great creative work under those circumstances.
That's a great question, Mary Catherine, including probably the mother of all NDAs, right? Because you cannot say you won't believe what we just designed.
They're in it for the love of the game.
Yeah, for the love of the game, right? And so she's, and then one after one particularly sort of grueling episode, and it was already late, so it's okay. Good night, everybody. The whole thing. And she was in such a foul mood going to bed, and she was upset because of this. She said, I can't believe this, and the whole thing. But, of course, then we had to just finish it to see how it ends on a cliffhanger. My whole point is we've gone from in our house is something kid-appropriate to is now something parent-appropriate. Are you sure this is okay for me? But you're not at that point yet.
So
you have thoughts.
I do have thoughts. Number one, that you and I had similar level exposure to
growing up.
Movies growing up.
Yeah.
In that, and my number one story about this that I've told, I'm sure before, is that I took a tin Gremlins lunchbox to kindergarten.
Right. Yeah.
Like, well, I was making a statement.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking in like, do you want to F with me?
because you had Gremlins and not strawberry shortcake.
Exactly, Vic. See, you read the room. Okay.
My Little Pony. Oh, okay. That's all right.
Yeah. You know you can mess with that girl. You can't mess with me.
No.
All right.
Scary.
So I walk in with my Gremlins lunchbox, which implies that by 5.5 years old, I had seen Gremlins.
Yeah.
So that's where I was.
Yeah.
Now I have
people died in that movie.
Oh yeah.
There were sharp teeth. People are getting like bitten.
It's gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny gruesome, but not really for a 5-year-old.
No.
Anyway. I have a standard for shows where, like, if it makes me watch like this,
yes,
with my hand,
yes,
with my face behind the hands,
right.
I am more sensitive to that stuff than I was when I was
totally.
Young.
Yeah,
and
I don't know why
I
that
feel like
is,
kids should, like, your kids are at the age where you embrace the fact that you feel kind of nonchalant about this brutal stuff, and then someday you have to be like, ooh. Yikes.
Yeah, well, and part of it, of course, is becoming a parent sort of changes your reaction to violence.
Exactly. Yes.
I was very intrigued about this Robert Eggers movie Nosferatu, which looks terrifying, and then I read that there's, Jennifer's nodding her head. Did you see the movie? You saw it? No, but I mean, there's child death in the traditional European medieval, sense of, I mean, these are stories.
Problematic for me.
But that's also classic sort of traditional stories from Central Europe, of course, where these things happen. They take, away and everything, and it's very scary. And I'm like, nope, not going to do it. Not going to do it. But
no, it's a lot. I want to suggest to you for family viewing.
Okay.
2 other. And I'm not just doing this to be problematic.
Are you setting me up here?
2 other Korean reality shows.
Oh, right.
That are more wholesome than the fictional reality show that you're watching in Squid Game. And I think I've suggested them before, and not just because you're Asian, just because they're good.
Yes.
Number 1, Physical 100. The first season is better than the second.
Yes, you were a big fan of that.
Yeah, where it's 100 people, women and men, competing in these grueling practices, which also great production design. This is like a Korean specialty, apparently. And they're not the same stakes as the Squid Game, but like it's similar setups and fascinating, the psychological things that they do to them and the physical requirements of it. And the last man standing is just like the hero. Anyway, so Physical 100 is one. The other one is Culinary Class Wars. I think it's what it's called. You would really like this one. So they have somewhat renowned and up and coming street chefs or young chefs, like street food kind of vendors and that kind of thing, young entrepreneurs against established Michelin star chefs. Okay. And they face off team on team in a reality show. It's very good.
Okay, and that's what on Netflix, or is it on
Those
Amazon?
will not make Kate mad before she goes to bed.
Well, she she enjoys the Great British Baking Show.
Yeah, well,
it's very pleasant.
That is the most pleasant.
Yes, I like that too. I did want to say one other thing about Squid Game too, which is this sort of, it's sort of very anti-capitalist in the sense that, this is what's driving people to do these things. They're so desperate because they accumulate all this debt and they have no way out. And so they have to kill each other in order to get out of this mountain of debt, particularly in Korea for whatever reason. And this sort of Lockean indictment of our sort of human nature, etc. But then they have other people that you're supposed to be sympathetic to, but ultimately not, including a trans character. That's the big twist in this one, is there is a trans character who is, one of the good people. I was going to say one of the good guys, but really one of the good people.
I think guys is gender neutral.
Good women. Okay. And yet at the same time, she is like, we should really stop now. On the other hand, that surgery is really expensive, so I need to continue playing.
We love a complex character.
Yeah, it's a complex character. Okay.
I think that's the first time on Getting Hammered we've had the phrase Lockean indictment. So good job for that.
It's in my head. I would get so upset about these things.
Real quickly, I have
what's going on with you?
I have a parenting story from this weekend, which is that we had a birthday party for that one of the kids was invited to, and we looked. It was Saturday, and we looked at the invitation and realized, this birthday party is 0.7 miles from the house.
Okay.
So it's down the street.
Yeah.
It's across one semi-major street, but not major, medium major. And so we make the call. She should walk from this party. So what I actually did was I took her to the party and then told her to walk home.
You drove her to the party.
Yeah, like Mama doesn't need to be out twice, right? So I took her to the party and told her she should walk home. It was very cold. I will give her that. And she was a little nervous until she saw that it was not the major road. She thought it was the major road.
No,
it was the medium road. And I told her, when you're done, just walk home. Let's think for a minute how normal this would have been when you were 9 years old or when I was 9 years old. Like just not a problem at all.
Yeah, you would it would be like walking over to a friend's.
Yeah, no one would even think twice. I dropped her off, and luckily I did think to myself, you should tell the mom that she's going to walk home because, she might be like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, where's your, just wander off.
Right. So I go in and I talk to the mom and I just say, this is my daughter. She's happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. When everything's done, she's just going to walk back up to the house. And then I got a look of, I don't want to exaggerate it, but concern bordering on shock.
Because it's not down the street. It's 0.7 miles.
Yeah.
It's almost 3/4 of a mile.
0.6, 0.7. Yeah. I was rounding down to like half a mile, but yeah.
you told her, yeah.
So like she's gonna head back. And I got a look of concern and I said, we're just right back up past this landmark. It's no big deal. And she's like, oh, okay. And I said, and she has her watch because they have those little gizmos that they can call us on. And that made her feel better. But I just was thinking through, when I was 9 years old, I regularly biked miles and miles.
Oh, sure.
Without
biking,
alerting my parents where I was. And I would say that my parents were among the more protective of those in the neighborhood. But there was this place called 9th Street in Durham, which was probably 2 miles from my house. That certainly by 10 or 11, we were biking up to 9th Street, meeting friends, buying a soda.
Could you bike to the big famous mall in Durham or no?
The Northgate Mall?
Yeah, Northgate.
Oh, Northgate Mall would have been very easy to get to.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I spent much of my high school years wasting time in the food court there. So yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's funny to think of it as famous now because
it is. It's like one of the original malls.
It's quite run down at this point. But yeah, so it just struck me as quite a change in how we.
Well, here's a question.
Evaluate.
Here's one of the factors for me.
She got home safe, by the way.
Oh yes, she left people hanging there for a second.
Didn't want you guys to worry.
Was this a party during the day?
Yes.
And she left before sundown.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At night, I would have. Well, that's the other thing. Would she be unsafe at night? No, not in our neighborhood.
And alone.
That's another thing about alone. She's trustworthy. Another thing about my neighborhood is when we were biking around. This is Durham in the 80s. Y'all can look it up. It was the hood. Okay, it was.
That's
Life is safer now, even though people don't believe that. Statistically, it is. Although violent crime has certainly taken a turn in the past couple of years, but trend-wise, and certainly where I live is safer than where I lived as a child. But we were free for all out there, man.
You were, but you had some. You were probably monitoring her as she was coming back.
Nah, I did notice the time though, and just go like.
It was like, when did you get back?
Should she be back? I didn't have to wait for the PSA. It's 10 p.m. Where are your
children?
children?
Do you know where your children are? That's right. That was a big
Does Jennifer
deal.
know that one? She's of a different generation. Our producer. There used to be a PSA that went out over the public airwaves at 10 p.m. that said, "It is 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?"
Yeah, because you
remind parents.
Yeah, in case they were half in the bag. Like, oh, that's a good question. I think I left them. I left them in the.
How many do
at
you
the
have?
Circus.
Are they in the home?
Yeah. That's right.
Anyway,
it was
that's how we used to live life.
I remember that.
But that was back when kindergartners took Gremlins lunchboxes to school.
That's right. And nobody would mess with you because of that.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, she got back safe. We're toughening her up.
Good. Good.
By the age of 24, she'll be carrying a Gremlins lunchbox. All right.
My lunchbox.
I said we had all this news, and then we.
I know. Here we are. It's 30 minutes now, Mary Katharine, and. My lunchbox was Battle of the Planets, and either you know it or you don't know it, okay? I was into the anime early.
I feel like that's on brand. And not just because you're Asian.
Because it was a Japanese cartoon. Okay, please.
You know what?
Yeah.
First week of the Trump presidency, we got a lot of racial jokes in the first 15 minutes
well,
of the show.
Well, it's a new era.
This is where we are, people. Yeah. Okay. Shall we do the news? First week of the Trump administration. There are so many things happening. And I know that my lecture for much of the mainstream media is to take a deep breath and evaluate each of these things. But I got to tell you, it's hard to find the time to take a deep breath and evaluate each of these things. That is not an excuse for freaking out when things are not the thing you're projecting.
Yeah.
However, it is tricky to stay up to date.
I felt like the Washington Commanders and the sort of swarming Eagles offense over you. It's just overwhelming, and you don't know where to turn or where to stop first. I mean, we're up to 38 executive orders, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's all across the board, and I think that's the plan. I mean, that is the point of this, so that they cannot focus on one thing and then becomes the media narrative in order to stop it from happening and turn public opinion against it. Instead, there are so many things that are popular largely among conservatives, definitely not among liberals, and probably by and large still popular with most of America. Obviously, Trump won the popular vote, so these are things that he's doing particularly with immigration. But they can't get a hold of that, and they don't have a coherent message, the Democrats. It's overwhelming. If you're on the other side, I wouldn't know what to do first.
Yes, it is a lot, and I'm like basically 90% on all of it.
Yeah, I'd say 90. It's not. It's not going to be. Everything's going to be.
He also ran on sweeping change, particularly to the federal government itself. So I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. As you're listening to this, RFK Jr. will be at his confirmation. He will have two in two different committees, so he'll be grilled twice. Howard Lutnick, who is the Commerce Secretary nominee, will appear before a committee this week, as well as Kelly Loeffler, former U.S. Senator from Georgia, who's been tapped to lead the Small Business Administration. Pam Bondi, her nomination to head the Justice Department will go to the full floor this week, hopefully. Kash Patel on Thursday, head of the FBI.
That's a big one.
He'll appear in front of the Senate Judiciary Panel. And Tulsi Gabbard should be towards the end of the week as well. So that's a lot.
We have a Secretary of State and a Secretary of Defense.
We do.
And a Secretary of the Treasury. Those are some key ones.
Scott Bessent, he got through. One of my favorite characters of the new administration.
Yes.
Russ Vought, head of OMB, will go to the full floor. And I'm glad I mentioned that because let's talk about some of the executive orders that have popped up.
I do want to mention quickly, Scott Bessent now becomes the highest-ranking gay member of the cabinet.
Confirmed, right? Yeah.
And you would imagine perhaps the Human Rights Council and all the other LGBTQIA2S plus groups are going to celebrate this the way they did Pete Buttigieg, who was much lower on the totem pole of the cabinet. No. Tepid at best. Tepid at best.
There's a great moment in Bessent's confirmation hearings where he said, I am a father of this many kids. I am a gay man married to my husband, but I was chosen for my merits and my ability to do this job, not because of my identity.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Because they love to say that, celebrate somebody's identity, but the only thing that really matters to them, of course, is they share the same ideology.
Lefty identity is what you need.
Yeah.
So this executive order came up just recently, and so people are kind of still getting their heads wrapped around it. This is from Reason magazine with the write-up. With the exceptions of Social Security and Medicare benefits, the federal government has paused issuing grants, loans, and other forms of financial assistance. That means funding for schools. It means funding for disaster relief. That means grants to state and local government. That means home buying assistance. Nobody knows exactly what will happen or how long this will go on. They also don't know whether it's legal. This was done by the Office of Management and Budget under the direction of President Donald Trump, not Congress, which generally gets say over how such funds are directed. This temporary pause, quote, will provide the administration time to review agency programs and determine the best uses of the funding for those programs consistent with the law and the president's priorities. It goes on, the memo does, and says, we will not be tolerating federal resources to advance Marxist equity, transgenderism, and Green New Deal social engineering policies as a waste of taxpayer dollars. I think this will be adjudicated as several other executive orders will be, because protections in these areas are pretty expansive. Protections for civil servants are pretty expansive. That's one of the things he ran on, making those protections less expansive. Right. So he's testing here, but I am not mad at the idea of pausing and examining.
No, because what you're seeing right now, and some people are bringing this up and breaking news about this, even the Beacon is doing this, which is, hey, what are the things that we were spending money on that are absolutely ridiculous, including programs for the State Department overseas to promote, whatever DEI initiative for other people and other cultures where we should be focusing on ourselves. So I get it. It's a big deal to pause almost everything. On the other hand, there are ways to bypass that and submit your request to the Office of the Secretary of State or wherever else in order to continue necessary funding in other places. But otherwise, let's take a break here, because this is what he was promised to do in the first place. This is what he campaigned on.
An aggressive
upend it. He's upending.
An aggressive reassessment of what we're doing in federal government is what was the platform.
Right, because again, I have a feeling that we're going to probably save ourselves a good amount of money here.
We shall see. Bring it, Doge. The purging at the Justice Department.
Oh, yeah.
I'm interested what you think about this one. It is a dozen prosecutors who worked on the two criminal investigations into Donald J. Trump for the special counsel, Jack Smith. Trump saying they can't be trusted to faithfully implement the president's agenda. What's your thought on these guys being dismissed?
Well, Mary Katharine is somebody who supported Richard Nixon's Saturday Night Massacre. Oh, sorry, kidding here. Am I kidding, though? Robert Bork was a pretty good Solicitor General. If you want to take the defense for Trump here, right?
Yeah.
Can these people who have investigated him be trusted to continue doing a job for him?
Right.
I don't know. But of course, again, and these are civil servants. I understand. These are not political appointees. So this is a big deal. It's very sensitive. Everybody's upset about it. On the other hand, this Justice Department really went after him hard, right? I mean, I still can't believe there are people out there who don't believe that it had been weaponized, and they were warning that only with Trump will this happen. And the guy has been through multiple attempts to get rid of him, get him out of the election, and in some cases prosecute him and even put him possibly in jail with on frivolous grounds in many cases, not every case.
Yeah.
So I get why he's doing it. Maybe I'm okay with it. What do you think, Mary?
I'm basically where you are. I'm like, okay, so there's 12 lawyers. Mm-hmm. The DOJ has lots of lawyers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 12 of them were engaged in trying to throw you in jail while you were running for president. And you have a concern that might be reflected in their work product moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, the people who say that they shouldn't be dismissed will say, like, oh, these are unassailable civil servants. But I think we've learned over the years that the civil servants are not as unassailable and apolitical as people would have you believe. Now, again, they have a lot of protections, so they might sue and get rehired or get paid out or whatever it is. Even Peter Strzok got like $2 million in a settlement. Like these.
And for having done legitimately bad things.
Yeah.
Him and
Lisa Page.
Yes.
Got that money. Got that bag. Andy McCabe.
And Andy McCabe. The three of them.
Fired for cause.
Yeah.
Fired for cause.
You know what?
At any rate, so am I that mad? No, I'm not.
I'd say I'm fine with those people being gone. Anybody like them. Archibald Cox, Richard Kleindienst, Elliot Richardson. You know, I'm sorry. I'm having my Nixon flashback over here. You know,
were you in charge of that list? Was that you?
That was me. Even if we have to go down to the janitor.
Okay,
sorry,
so
that was from Oliver Stone's Nixon.
Those are the sort of controversial ones for the moment. We've talked about the DEI one. I wanted to talk a little bit about some foreign policy situations.
Oh, yeah.
One, apparently the Houthis have decided they're not going to be pirating and firing anything off from the Red Sea anymore.
As they should.
That's nice. That's a nice change. I like that.
Yeah.
Colombia. Colombia had some flights of incoming citizens of the state of Colombia, of the country of Colombia, who had been apprehended here, criminal aliens that were being sent back.
Criminals.
And the president, left-leaning, sort of socialist-ish guy. Is he socialist?
Former, like a narco-terrorist in his time.
Okay.
Let's just throw it out there.
He says, we're not taking them. Sends the flight back. Alleges that the plane on which the criminals have come back home is inhumane because it's a military plane. So that free taxpayer-funded flight on a C-130 or whatever it was not good enough. No. Sends them back.
Nothing less than business class for these people. Yeah.
President Trump is on the golf course when this happens, if my understanding of the timeline is correct.
Okay.
He truth socials, hey, we're going to put a 25% tariff on Colombia. We're going to do this. We're going to what were the other? There were several.
Yeah, it was across the board.
It was across the board punishments for these guys.
Yeah.
Within several holes on the golf course, within an hour, the Colombian president, who had prefaced all of this by saying, I will never bend the knee to Donald Trump, was like, never mind. I'm going to send my presidential plane to pick these guys up and bring them home.
How is it that they get the presidential plane? As you pointed out, these are people who had been, criminal wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And is Colombia going to embrace them? We're not talking about children here. We're not talking about these families that J.B. Pritzker, can I just throw this in there?
Yeah.
The governor of Illinois had tweeted out that already he's heard reports that ICE agents had stormed a school to take away undocumented children in the school. And it was pointed out this was Secret Service responding to a report of a threat.
Yeah.
And he left the tweet up. And as right before this taping of the show, he was still up there getting massively ratioed, obviously. But, in case somebody else wants to pick up that sort of misinformation and spread it, because that's just ridiculous.
I'm sure Nina Jankowicz is on the case.
Oh, hey.
That's the former head of the disinformation board inside the Biden federal government. Among other things, 25% tariff on Colombian imports, set to escalate to 50% if the dispute was not resolved within a week. Visa bans for Colombian officials, stricter customs inspections. However, all those things were withdrawn because this happened very quickly. I gotta say, it is nice to just have a president, period.
Mm-hmm.
That is an improvement.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Over the constitutional crisis that we were in up until January 20th.
And not
where
Ron
we had
Klain.
Absent
or whoever.
Or committee president or whoever it was that did not know who they were pardoning when, and in fact got caught pardoning a seriously violent drug criminal who was on the nonviolent.
That's correct. From Connecticut.
From Connecticut, who murdered a mother and son who were going to testify against him, or had them murdered, and was convicted for this. Clemency for him.
So bad. The press their talking point was, say what you will about Hunter Biden and the family, but only nonviolent, people, criminals or whatever, nonviolent individuals received the pardon or the preemptive pardon. That is not true. And you mentioned this person and what he did, this drug dealer.
Well, and I don't think Biden probably knew what he was signing.
That's the other thing.
Or did he sign it? I'd love to know. At any rate, so that's a huge improvement.
So bad, by the way, that Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal said that There was
someone dropped the ball.
Someone dropped the ball, because he was the attorney general at the time, and it was an awful crime.
I think someone dropped the brain, and it was Biden's, and he has not had full capacity for quite some time.
Yeah.
So that's a huge improvement in the first week of the Trump administration. I also there's an old version of me that would have been like, well, it seemed a little rash, and isn't there a process for this? And
when you say there was an old version of you mean like physically old?
No, or a former version of me.
I love because the impression sounded like you lost your dentures.
I just would have been more like,
okay.
I don't know about this tactic.
You really need to see this show on YouTube to get the full appreciation.
But I have suffered
old Mary Katharine Ham.
4 years of the Biden administration.
Yes.
And
where's he dead?
The years of the Obama administration before that, lying down for adversaries, kicking allies in the nuts. And this was the philosophy. And look, Colombia is supposed to be an ally, right? Yeah. So I'm sure in the Biden administration would have been like, we have deep concern over the fact that this miscommunication that we're having. I'm sure it's fine. It'll be worked out within 3 to 7 weeks, right?
Yeah.
That would be, they'd put a blue ribbon panel together. Mm-hmm. They'd come up with some sort of decision made by State Department civil servants who can't be fired, which probably would end up with just like the criminal aliens staying in the U.S.
Right.
That would be the solution. I prefer this.
What surprises me
1 hour
is the governors and mayors of these sanctuary cities and states who think this is a good look to say, we're not going to let you come in and take our sex traffickers and rapists and murderers.
They're on the wrong side of this.
No, and the optics, because what you're seeing right now and the footage that is being sent out there is of gang members, criminals, being rounded up to be sent back to where they came from. And I think most Americans support that. I think people who live in these neighborhoods are not going to miss these Trendiaragua gang members hanging out on the corner terrorizing people. And they seem to think they're hoping that it's going to be an ICE raid to take away, these poor innocent people. At the moment, we're talking about criminals, gang members.
Also, I saw a local piece that was supposed to be sympathetic about someone who was being deported, and he had like at least one DUI conviction, if not several. And it's like, I think the left has so deceived themselves about where the public is on this that they think that's sympathetic.
Right.
And I think they're wrong.
And that extends to the media, of course, because they are outraged by this. And they can't figure out or understand, I think, why more people aren't outraged. Or maybe they don't care. And again, their audience is now very small. So they're just going to continue doing their thing.
Not only is no one outraged by him flexing on Colombia and Colombia caving in the general public, they might not even know it happened because it happened so quickly.
Yeah.
That problem got solved. I did see that Ana Navarro was saying, we get a lot of suddenly free market again.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly free market Ana Navarro again says, we get a lot of flowers and coffee and chocolate from Colombia. And so happy Valentine's Day, America. Right. It's like, okay, well, the thing didn't happen.
She talked about the flowers, and I think it was Elizabeth Warren or AOC who warned about the coffee coming from Colombia. We don't all get all of our coffee beans just from Colombia. And props to Black Rifle Coffee Company. Who pointed this out, that they source it from multiple places. Yes. So they said, please don't sound off on things you don't know.
And also, I don't have a beef with Colombia, but you guys wouldn't take your own citizens.
Yeah.
Okay? So then we have to deal with that. And this is how we dealt with that. Yeah. And Trump has the United States of America finally acting like a middle-aged lady who's been watching a lot of reels or TikToks about setting healthy boundaries. Yeah. And she's like not messing around with her ex anymore. That's the vibe of the United States of America right now. Yeah. I am living my best life. I am in therapy. I am setting boundaries. I'm not letting people abuse me.
Right.
And you're going to find out, as Trump said, F-A-F-O.
F-O. Right.
He put that on Truth Social too. An AI picture of himself that said FAFO behind him.
Okay, well, Well, okay.
Yeah, the former version of me would be like, I don't like that. That is.
Okay. I will say this on a tangent.
I like it more now. I'll tell you that. I like it more now.
On a tangent, but it is a related tangent. Having recently seen the Al Pacino movie Scarface, not the original Scarface. The opening is about the Mariel boat lift and how, and it's it's directed by Brian De Palma, and it just gives you this narration and video as they run the credits about what happened towards the end of the Carter administration when Castro promised to release all these people who ostensibly were relatives of people in Florida. But of course, what happened was he had, as Trump says this, emptied the jails, is a Trumpian phrase. He emptied the jails, and that led to Tony Montana's arrival in Florida and other criminals, the Mariel boat lift. And that's the premise. That's the opening of Scarface. It is. And it's funny because
which means it is history that the American people know.
Yes.
Because that's how we learn our history.
That's how we learn our things. Okay.
All right. What else we got? Oh, I did want to mention on the results front, Western North Carolina, from the folks that I follow down there, Matt Van Swell, who I interviewed, Sean Hendricks, who's worked very hard with Operation Shelter to get things moving down there, the private citizens who have been using their heavy machinery to clear roads for months. Mm-hmm. The Army Corps of Engineers is back in like huge numbers.
Right.
There are dump trucks everywhere. Debris is being moved. Things that hadn't happened inexplicably for 4 months. And it's like, look, I understand that there's a bunch of private citizens who can do this work, right? It's a beautiful thing about Appalachia that you have a lot of people who are licensed on a backhoe.
Yeah.
That's a thing that we have
actually do
in the South. That's where you get the Cajun Navy, these private entities that do really good work in the face of disasters. One of the reasons those entities have formed is because FEMA's terrible at it. Yeah. They've been really bad at it. They've been especially bad here. And it's so nice to see federal resources actually being used to help the people who have filled the gap for 4 months. Since they're busy taking our money for these things, let's use it for the things it's supposed to be used for instead of putting up a bunch of FEMA people probably in Charlotte and Raleigh where there's no disaster happening.
Yeah.
I suspect that's where they all are.
Well, I mean,
gotta go back to Charlotte.
And Trump had his hands full because he did, J.D. Vance was down there, on the ground. But of course, Trump visited on his way to Los Angeles to do his big powwow with Mayor Karen Bass and Governor Gavin Newsom. So, yes. I mean, there's a lot of disasters going on.
By the way, another thing that I like is Trump, and in the past he's been, remember the Puerto Rico storm where he tossed the paper towels into the crowd. I didn't find that objectionable like other people did. I thought that was a little, people were freaking out too much. He was down there doing the thing. He was checking in with people. Right. But the critique has been he is too much showman, not enough in the details, not empathetic enough. I think both in LA and Western North Carolina, he did not live up to those stereotypes. Or to that old version of himself. Mm-hmm. I think the new version is slightly different.
Yeah.
In North Carolina, he handed the mic off to people who just told heartbreaking story after heartbreaking story of not having power for months. One woman talked about how she lived in the sound booth at her church with her husband for several months because no one can get up to her road. And then she explained all the reasons that, FEMA won't give her this money until she rebuilds the road by herself and then applies for money from FEMA for the rebuilding of a road that this woman is doing by herself in Western North Carolina. It's like he hands over the mic. He lets these people tell their stories. That elevates this whole crisis to a much more obvious place and they get the services they need. Then he goes out to LA where there was a great moment where I believe Melania spoke in this person's native language.
Croat.
Was it? Yeah, she was
Slovenian, so it's close enough.
So she spoke to a woman on the ground who had lost her home and had this sort of tender moment. Trump is arguing with Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, she's saying, no, people can clear their stuff now. And he's saying, no, I'm talking to people and they're saying they can't clear debris and their homes and restart building until they get a permit. And they're told 18 months. Yeah. And Karen Bass says, no, not 18 months. He's like, that's what they're telling me.
Right.
They're saying 18 months. And she says, no, they can clear debris right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, they can go right to their homes and clear debris. And she says, well, within a week. And he says, a week is a long time, is the way I see it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to say that I used to think it was French, and then I used to think it was Italian, but obviously now it's Serbo-Croat that is the hottest language. Listening to her.
We should talk about her portrait, by the way.
Oh, it's a great.
Taken in the Oval Office.
Yes. Black and white.
Black and white, wearing a tux.
She's all business.
She's amazing. She looks amazing. I saw that portrait and I thought, I don't think it's Dawn that's the one we need to worry about settling scores.
Right.
I don't think that's the one.
Somebody compared her to Robin Wright in House of Cards because there was a similar photo, like that.
I can see it. She might have meant that.
Yeah.
She might have meant
That's
for you
right.
to see that. So anyway, that argument with Karen Bass gets people to be able to clear debris quickly.
Yeah.
And just a person from the federal government saying a week is too long is good.
Yeah.
I don't know that it will work all the time. I don't know that it changes the game on the ground if you don't follow up on details, although there is now an interim FEMA guy who is a former Navy SEAL. That makes me feel a little better about the whole situation. But the signal that, no, we are going to do this quickly is something the government never hears.
Trump 2.0, clearly more effective than his first iteration.
Yes.
And I think that is what terrifies the left. Not so much, it's not so much the competency in and of itself. It's the competency in getting through and making policy changes that are completely, the opposite of what they want. And this is what they worry about is the competency that he's got his act together, whereas they can, the first time around, just pick him apart.
Yep.
And it was very much like Clinton's first go around. There was a lot of chaos in the White House, and now they know what's going on, and they had a plan.
This also makes sense because, they didn't know they were going to be in the administration.
Yeah, right.
And he had never done any of this work before. He had done business work. This is why I do like him on the ground for these disasters, because rebuilding is something he has thought about.
Yeah.
So there was again, none of the stuff works from last time around. They were making fun of his shoes when he arrived in LA. He was wearing work boots. They were like steel toe work boots, but whoever the viral liberal tweeter was did not understand what work boots are. They thought he was wearing something prissy, I guess. I don't know what the problem was. But anyway, he's been on construction sites. This is part of his job.
It's right up there with that person in the media who had tweeted out, goes back to the first Trump administration, when there were protests outside the White House and there was a big confrontation with Secret Service and in Lafayette Park.
Yeah.
And this person in the mainstream media had taken a photo and said, rubber bullets. I think these are rubber bullets. In fact, they were
ear protection.
Ear protection.
Can I play a little bit on the FEMA question from Margaret Brennan?
Oh,
who is the reporter who
CBS.
J.D. Vance sat down with. CBS's Face the Nation. She also ran the vice presidential debate, which is probably why Vance is like, well, this should be a good outing for me because it was last time. And look, on one hand, I think some were saying he should reward a more friendly outlet with his first interview. But when you hear this, I'm going to tell you, Margaret Brennan should run his campaign for president, and they should just do this once a week, and the man would win 40 plus states. Yeah. Here she is asking about reforming FEMA, which has obviously demonstrabably failed the people in Western North Carolina. And how dare we address that?
FEMA has specialized expertise that some of these states just don't have.
Margaret,
in their arsenal. And
I wish
how
that they...
will states who are lower income states, the Mississippis, the Kentuckys, the Alabamas, be able to do this for themselves without federal help?
Well, the president, to be clear, is not saying we're going to leave anybody behind. He's saying that in the way that we administer these resources, some of which is coming from the federal level, some of which is coming from the state level, we've got to get the bureaucrats out of the way and get the aid to the people who need it most.
Y'all dum-dums can't be picking up trash on your own. That's what they've been doing for 4 months. Yeah. They just need more money and resources to help them because, they contributed it through their taxes, which allegedly you're in favor of.
Yeah.
How I give you a choice, Vic. I give you a choice. A storm hits your home.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of fallen trees. Mm-hmm. You got some damage. Mm-hmm. You have a choice between 100 random people from New York City phone book, Manhattan,
Okay.
or any major metro area,
Yeah.
or 100 people from northern Alabama,
Yeah.
to help you at your property the next day. Which do you choose?
Obviously.
Unless it's Staten Island. If it's Staten
I
Island,
was going to say, I'll choose the ones from Staten Island. They get it done.
Yeah, I don't mean to besmirch the working class people of any major city,
And
but
certainly the Bronx.
the
as we
chances
know,
that you're gonna get
You know who they voted for.
a guy with a chainsaw
Yeah.
are pretty high.
Right.
In northern Alabama.
No, I mean, again, but it's always been that sort of, conservative belief that, that government at the lower level is better than the government all the way in Washington or some bureaucrats.
FEMA's expertise is mostly most of the federal government's expertise is in raking in as much of our money as possible.
Yeah.
So then just send it back so we can do the thing.
And the FEMA black site. Are they?
That.
We're kidding.
There was-
I don't know. We're gonna get flagged for that one. I was kidding about that.
There was some local video again from Western North Carolina that showed that there's like hundreds of temporary housing units from FEMA behind a locked fence that nobody can get to.
What is happening?
2 of them have been placed. I mean, you can't argue with the lack of results.
It reminds me.
You have to engage with that.
When I was at the Texas State Fair once, and there was a woman sitting on a bench, and she had a tattoo on her lower back, and the lower back tattoo said, "Get her done." That's what they do. Okay. Sorry.
I think that's the slogan.
Yeah, like Jennifer
Okay.
is like, she's mortified. What kind of an episode is this?
All right. Can I play another real quick clip from J.D. Vance and Margaret Brennan?
Oh, yes.
Again,
okay, please. This is
again,
good.
they should just do this once a week. It'll be like the Prime Minister's questions, but J.D. Vance just goes to Margaret Brennan every week and just chops her up.
Yeah.
Here we go. This is about illegal immigration and deportation of criminal
yes.
aliens that, as you note, even in liberal cities, like, you're on the wrong side of this.
When you talked to us in August, you said, I don't think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
but there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that we know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people
it's
are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted. And many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted. And because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
That's the infuriating part for her.
So look, in the case of Afghan refugees, there will be cases where we should be taking care of people who served with troops. By the way, the ship has mostly sailed on that since we abandoned them to the suite.
There's a good movie about
in the
this.
year of 2021 on the orders of one Joe Biden. However, if there are ones that we can still protect who really worked with the troops, and I think there are even Americans in Afghanistan. By the way, did you know that the Taliban had American hostages who they turned over like a day after Trump was inaugurated? Did you see that?
That was not covered.
That's a thing that happened.
by the
Anyway,
media.
more results. Okay, so
well, go ahead.
go ahead. I think I lost my train of thought. So
Okay,
you go.
No, I was just going to say regarding the Afghan situation, what happened obviously during the evacuation and the pullout was horrid, and we left not only all these people behind, but something like $7-8 billion of military hardware behind. And these girls are back now in Afghanistan. They can't go to school after 6th grade. I mean, all the rights they've been stripped of their rights, and this is somehow, and Joe Biden had no regrets, right? He had no regrets.
No, he
about
called
this.
it an extraordinary success.
Yeah, wonderful, happy. The problem was you had all of these these transports that got a lot of these Afghans out of the airport. They were not vetted when
No.
they got on the plane.
No.
It was this mad rush to get off, and people were falling off the
Correct.
plane. And some of them are good, but maybe some of them are bad. The problem is that's the thing. We don't know. And at the same time, we left, as you were saying, people who helped this country, translators, we left them behind. Some of them were tortured, killed, and others, we had to rescue them using extraordinary means. There's a movie about this with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's just
called The Covenant.
Yeah.
And because they didn't do this the first time, yes, there does need a reassessment be done. That's not how that sentence should be, but you know what I'm saying. You guys know what I'm saying?
Yeah, me understand. Go ahead.
A reassessment is needed because it was not done the first time. So, but I love this idea that like, if he came here and was radicalized and tried to blow up a building, it's like A-okay.
Yeah.
She's like, that flavor of terrorism is fine with Margaret
Now, we
Brennan.
don't know when he
She's like, and he's like, I don't really care, Margaret.
Right.
I do think that line is an indication of the vibe shift, because these emotional appeals
Right.
and this kind of silliness that I think in the past, Vance, particularly as a guy who can read the room and is a very good communicator, in the past, he might have felt obligated to be like, well, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the American people are done with,
They're done with it.
well, I understand the concern you're bringing, Margaret. The American people are, I don't really care, Margaret.
Right.
About the flavor of terrorism from the person we didn't vet.
Right. And CBS and a lot of these outlets no longer hold the same power and influence and cachet that they did back in the day, right? This is not talking to Walter Cronkite about the Vietnam War.
Speaking of the falling power of emotional breakdowns on TV, Jim Acosta has left CNN.
What is your take on this, by the way? I have thoughts, but you...
So he left of his own volition,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
But not really, because they put him in a terrible time slot, didn't they? I think that was their
So
move.
here was the situation, right? They said, we got, I'm going to paraphrase here, which is, we got great news for you. You're going to get that 9 p.m. time slot, Pacific Standard Time. So, in other words, he was going to be on midnight on the East Coast, and he did not like that. And they tried to explain, hey, you know, news is not just East Coast, New York, D.C. centric, you know, I mean, California,
that was
that's
Don
big.
Lemon's slot, right? Apparently that's the drama queen slot.
Yes.
You got to go to the
Now, and
West Coast 9 p.m.
Acosta actually, you know, recently showed off a poster that a fan of his had, you know, put together talking about Acosta saving journalism. And so he's, you know, I mean, it just levels of maniacal egotism. I don't know what I'm going to say, but so he's not taking the midnight slot. But I'm kind of surprised because these people really love being on TV.
Yes.
And I don't know where he thinks he's going to end up.
But I think he also has learned, like everyone else, and actually this is an area where drama queening is rewarded. He can go on the internet and drama queen about Trump and probably get enough viewers on X or on Substack or whatever his own platform would be.
Yeah.
There is an audience for that.
Yeah.
And at this point, that audience could be as large as the CNN one, which is what Tim Burchett of Tennessee pointed out to him the other day, Acosta to his face on air. Did you see this one?
It was covered on CNN. What you're saying, this is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes. Yeah. This is CNN. This is the news. We're asking you to come on and tell the truth.
And that's why more people are watching the Cartoon Network SpongeBob reruns right now, Jim.
That was technically not true, but their numbers have plummeted.
He didn't have to go so hard.
That was.
He
really
didn't have to
something.
go that hard, Jennifer.
Yeah.
But he did.
That was it.
That might have been it for Jim Acosta.
Yeah.
And a fitting coda to that arc, I would say.
Again, Trump's
undercut by SpongeBob.
Trump's reelection, and even before it happened, obviously, you saw that shift was happening with Jeff Bezos deciding we're not going to do an editorial endorsement of Kamala Harris, and the Los Angeles Times, with Patrick Soon-Shiong doing the same thing, and then the rest of the media being up in arms about this and upset because, you know, we like to report the news. By the way, we must help Kamala Harris. We need this endorsement for her.
It is a moral imperative.
Yes. And they all these people signed on to express their outrage. I'm so glad they are just reporting down the middle.
Do you have anything else to throw at me?
There's
I have
a
one
ton.
More topic, but go ahead.
Okay. Did you want to talk about the reinstating?
Yes.
The reinstating of our men and women in uniform who refused the vaccine ended
Yes.
up in the military.
Yes,
Sorry,
two quick
in the uniform.
COVID stories. Now it can be told. The reinstatement with back pay and proper rank
Yes.
for those who were released by the military when they would not take the COVID vaccination. By the time they were ordered to do that, we knew about the relative lack of efficacy in spreading COVID.
You're still going to get it.
It worked. And so it was both a strategic and moral wrong, I think, to have done that. And I am so glad that he's writing it. I don't know that a lot of people will come back. I hope many of them do.
Yeah.
But
it was a very serious
they were spurned by the military.
Yeah. And the military is a very serious recruitment problem. They're way behind on their numbers where they should be.
So I'm glad to see that. I'm also glad to see that newly minted CIA head, John Ratliff, released information that, oh, would you look at that? The CIA thinks that the lab leak theory is the leading theory for what brought about COVID. Huh.
People pushed back against this, particularly in the media, because Donald Trump took that position. And if he took the position, then you certainly can, and Anthony Fauci is a saint.
Yes.
However, for the rest of us, it just seemed like common sense. Occam's razor, even Jon Stewart, remember at the time pointing out, gee, did it actually jump species or, going from the pangolin lizard or whatever to humans in a wet market? Or was it the Wuhan virology lab?
Where you experiment on coronaviruses.
Yeah, and where you are doing gain of function research to make things deadly, and then it comes out of it.
And we also know that Francis Collins and Fauci, among others, colluded in the scientific community to make sure that the lab leak theory and those who spoke about it would be shamed, would be ostracized, would be punished professionally, so that they could censor that point of view, even though they knew it was a real possibility.
Right. What has gone largely unmentioned in the mainstream at this moment is Fauci's role in editing a paper that was supportive of the wet market theory of COVID, and then having that report come up in a briefing and then pretending that it was news to him and he didn't have any connection to this particular independently researched paper.
Once again, Tom Cotton needs apologies. Yeah. Apologies from the New York Times, which at the time was like, he's spreading racist conspiracy theories. No, it's not a racist conspiracy.
And they had a field day. He got totally owned by Fauci or whoever.
Yeah, owned. All owned.
Okay.
All these things come too late and with too little punishment, but I am glad that they're happening nonetheless. Yep. The last thing I wanted to bring up is, did you see the New York Magazine piece, The Cruel Kids Table? I
saw the cover, and what is the intent
to
show?
I'll just say that the subhead pretty much gets it for you. The Cruel Kids Table.
Yes.
Out late with the young right as they contemplate cultural domination. And there's a picture from above of an inaugural ball setting. Mm-hmm. A lot of young people dressed in formal wear who are, to a person, I must say, quite attractive.
Yes, people have pointed this out.
They look like they're having fun.
They're all white. This is a thing.
This is an important point.
Yeah.
Is that, of course, they make the point after putting this cover up. I mean, you'd really like.
I know. I've seen.
Mind hanging out with this crowd.
I've
Vic,
seen the photo. Yes,
several.
I'm intrigued.
Several there, but
budding stars.
The New York writer, of course, makes the point that oh yes, it's largely white. Well, someone found the original photo. And if you expand out from the cropped version, and actually you can see one African American man's hand in the photo. They let that one get by.
Wow.
There are Black and Hispanic people surrounding this part that they cropped out.
Unbelievable.
So that they could claim this. But what struck me about it is not a lot of people look at this picture and are like, that seems terrible.
Oh, I think, maybe not a lot, but certain segments are getting triggered by that photo.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But
they're
ideas,
coming after us. Oh, by the way, I'm a white liberal, but they're coming after us.
But their idea is that this sea of professional, healthy nicely dressed young people is inherently horrible and unfun and terrible. And look, this is probably like a more of a Turning Point's crowd, like a generation younger than I am, probably less conservative, more populist. But the cultural shift is real. This doesn't look like a group you don't want to hang out with. And they're just like, look at these supermodels all hanging out, having a nice time. And everyone's like, that seems okay.
Yeah, as usual, it says more about themselves than it does about them.
The writer, I mean, for a long time, this city has had the reputation of being a home to people who were maybe not the most popular in high school, and then get to sort of live out
that's right,
a more powerful role.
Right. Now is my revenge.
And look, some of that is fine as long as you're not a weirdo about it, right? You didn't have your moment to shine then, you have it later. I don't think generally peaking in high school is your best plan. I've peaked my whole life, so it's not a problem. But
I'm just about to peak right now.
Yeah, that's it. This is that's because you're at the cool kids table.
I'm reaching my moment now.
You're at the cool kids table.
52 years later. Okay.
I do think there's some, I think the technical term is butthurt over the fact that these people might be the ones who are in charge.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember there was, years ago, someone in the mainstream tried to go after the Weekly Standard cruises, right? And because we do the cruises. National Review does them, The Nation does them, et cetera. But I guess there was some video footage from an ad for the Weekly Standard cruise, and the person snarkily had written that this is an all white. The cast of the Weekly Standard is all white,
right? And
I'm in the video.
How dare?
Maybe they thought I was one of the workers in the cruise ship doing the karaoke, because that has happened to me.
I mean, honestly, that does confuse them sometimes. They do think that
like,
mostly
maybe and I reached out and they did issue a correction. I'm sure that.
The most famous piece of this genre, unfortunately, for liberal publications is Stephen Glass's ride along with young CPAC attendees, which was not real and was found to be not real, among others of his writing. So I look at all of these pieces with a jaundiced eye, although they can be entertaining.
I had one last question for you, Kamala. Mary Katharine. I have Kamala on my little note sheet. That's why I called you. Sorry.
You called me Kamala.
I told you this episode's going to be nuts.
Anything can happen.
Did you see the video of Kamala and Doug in the supermarket?
Yeah.
Okay. Post vice presidency. They're in a supermarket, I guess in LA, and people are coming up and they're shopping. They're looking at things to buy together. My question for you is if you had thoughts on that, but specifically, do you and Steve go shopping together at a supermarket?
We do not go shopping together. That would be inefficient, and my husband is not a fan of inefficiency, so we don't do that.
Okay.
However, I did think, and let me use this to temper my general optimism about this era of politics. There was some like sort of predictable trad dude tweeting about what kind of dude goes grocery shopping with his wife.
I saw that.
And I was like, that doesn't make you that makes you a good husband. That's a nice husband. What
is he suggesting, that she do all the shopping or that he do all the shopping?
That she do all the shopping.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, well, no, it's really.
I take it this would go badly in your home.
No, I mean she shops obviously for a lot of the necessities.
But you're doing specialty,
and I look at interesting things. I'm not afraid to try new things. And she's not going to buy the can of Spam. Okay, in our house.
No, I reject that manosphere take. I think it's nice for them to go shopping together. It's also not groundbreaking. There was a lot of cooing and oohing and eyeing about it. It's like they're just going grocery shopping.
I would, sometimes we've done this for whatever reason, but we're not going to go shopping together. I'll be like, okay, I'll get this stuff, you get this stuff. And the most important thing, and this is really a public service announcement for our listeners, the most important thing is that you tell your spouse, okay, I'll meet you at X spot. Who knows how long it's going to take, but I'll meet you at X spot, because if you just say, okay, I'll see you on the other side or whatever, you're going through 10 aisles.
Yeah, it's not happening.
And they might be in between the aisles.
And if it's COVID, you can only go one way. By the way, I love the idea of going
that.
to the grocery store together, of you and Kate, and like you guys would stand next to each other and push the cart at the same time.
Yeah, I know that would be quite the image.
It's like the
never
grocery
happened.
store version of sitting on the same side of the booth at the restaurant.
Yes, the sweetheart.
Bleh.
It's a sweetheart shopping cart.
Stop it! Don't do it.
Okay, I've got finally.
He rides in the seat. We all
That's
know it.
right. That happened to me. By the way, a famous story in my family growing up is I was standing on one edge of the cart and my sister was on the other. She let go. The cart flipped over and had a big. Well, that explains everything. Okay.
My mom would have whooped us for that.
The manager was very scared, brought over a bag of ice because they thought, something happened. Here, okay,
They
listen.
didn't use frozen peas?
I
They were
did
right
frozen
there.
Peas. Yes, that's right. I do have a call out.
Okay.
To some very fine listeners, Lauren and David Petron. I met them and their wonderful son at a school jazz concert where our boys go to school. They could not have been nicer. A lot of times, by the way, when they'll be like, "Oh, are you Victor Mattis?" and the whole thing. Usually, the next question is, "What is it like to work with Mary Katharine?"
Mm-hmm.
And I usually say, it's really not all cracked up to be.
That's what my husband says when people ask about being married to me. Okay.
Okay.
I'm kidding. He's very nice. Okay.
That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram. You should follow us. You should watch us, especially this episode, because I'm a little bit woo. All right. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media podcast.